The most suitable time to perform the ritual is the night when the moon first rises, or the dusk when the sun just sets. When the last ray of sunshine disappears, the evil creatures become free and cheer for it. Their mood affects the success rate of the demon subduing ceremony. The location of the ceremony is not suitable for performing at home due to the relationship between spell casting. It is best to choose a sparsely populated forest, open space, abandoned factory, etc. In the first 13 days of casting the spell, it is forbidden to wash the body with water. You cannot take a bath. This is to get close to such a filthy thing as the devil, and it must be kept dirty so that it can stink. The rotting animal carcasses used in the ritual are for this purpose. A little. Doing so is foul to human senses, but very fragrant to demons. 7 days before casting the spell, fasting garlic, although no one will like the smell of garlic, but the devil will hate garlic even more. The preliminary preparations are complete, and the next step is to cast spells. On the night of the casting day, a magic circle must be placed in the place where the spell is cast. There are various types of magic circles, and the specific arrangement depends on the existence the summoner wants to summon. The location of the note is a rare clean place in this area. There are piles of garbage, rotting food residues and broken household utensils. The smell below the vomit can't be covered. This is the city's sewers, the dirtiest place in the whole city, maybe not one of them. The handwriting on the spread note paper is slightly messy, and there is still a part of the content on the left. On the right paper is a general image of the ritual array, which was drawn with a pencil. On the left side of the note, there is a circle full of rotting lizards and mouse corpses. Naturally, the image style is exactly the same as the picture on the note. Some people perform demon-subduing rituals in this dirty place. This is a fact that can be seen with a little discernment. Has he succeeded? This has to be asked by the young man sitting beside the ritual formation. Su Kyun's line of sight has no focus. If anyone can see his mental state or soul state at the moment, it is roughly like a box of broken paint mixed together in water, fused in an irreversible form in the chaos, and then into a new color combination. This process is not very painful. Su Kyun would rather suffer, because it can make him feel his existence. However, the actual state is to take a long-distance bus for several hours, run around a small tree for 1,000 meters after getting off the bus, and finally do hundreds of big loops on the horizontal bar, and then go to the garbage dump to see the complicated cat. The dizziness and nausea made him want to spit out everything in his stomach. It's just that judging from the nearby pool of vomit that was still slightly hot, he probably had nothing to vomit. When the dizziness in my mind gradually diminished, some scattered memories began to emerge. Donald Grant, 23 years old, was born in Preston, North Hack, Lane Empire in 1796, a recent graduate of the Religion Department of Goethe University. My father, the owner of a small grocery store in Preston, died in a grocery store fire in 1815. My mother was a worker in a small workshop. Like my father, she died in a general store fire in 1815 in the imperial calendar. The memory ends here. Su Kyun was stunned. Why did he only have so little memory that the original soul of this body had amnesia? Impossible, he is a college student. If there is a problem with his brain, how can he learn that knowledge? How can he graduate from college? All the knowledge learned in the university has disappeared in my mind at this moment, and there is not a single bit of knowledge about religious studies left. It's like the memory of life has been forcibly cut off by a certain existence, leaving only those memories that are extremely impressive, such as parents, such as the language learned since childhood, and nothing else. Before Su Kyun was upset, when the dizziness disappeared, new memories began to appear in his mind. This time, it was accompanied by a needle-like pain and a hot burning sensation, as if someone had opened his heavenly lid and poured boiling water into it. The feeling of boiling is almost all over the body. This is not Donald's memory. Su Kyun confirmed this, because he never felt this way during the fusion of the previous memory, and this time he didn't recall anything. The scene in front of him suddenly began to blur, and his vision suddenly focused in front of him, ignoring the surrounding rubbish, and staring at the magic circle carved with the blood of unknown creatures. The center was filled with a six-pointed star filled with rotting animal corpses. Blood rings of various special symbols. The next moment, the scene in front of me began to be clear, just like trying to wear glasses with lenses, adjusting the degree, and adjusting the clarity of the things in front of me, and finally I could see it completely. And then, he understood the symbols above. Sacrifice, sacrifice, fall, soul, wait. What language is this? Covering his mouth, Donald looked at the magic circle in amazement. The symbols and marks on it did not belong to the native language in his mind. Under the premise of losing all religious memory, he should not be able to recognize them. Content. Sacrifice. Sacrifice. Trying to repeat the meaning of one of the symbols, Donald listened to his own accent as he spoke. It was difficult to say the syllable with a human mouthpiece. The vocal cords and tongue seemed to be forcibly used as a tool for vocalization. It felt like use a flat blade screwdriver to unscrew the Phillips screw cap. It works, but it doesn't work very well, weird and unfamiliar. This language and voice did not belong to his original soul, nor to Donald, but to another, more obscure, indistinguishable knowledge. Calm. Be calm. Eat grapes without spitting up grape skins, without eating grapes, spitting up grape skins, eat grapes. In order to calm down his mind, Donald began to try to empty his mind first by using tongue twisters, speaking 3 languages in turn. This is a habit left over as a debater on a debate team in a previous life, and the effect is still a little bit. I crossed over, here, it should be a sewer, and in front of me is a magic circle that I can understand. From the notes, it is a magic circle that is used to summon demons. Originally a cult member? We are atheists. Could it be that Donald's call brought my soul here? It is meaningless to ignore this matter for the time being, the key lies in what to do next. To live or to die, that is the question. The self in the previous life should have been drowned by the flash flood. Maybe this rebirth was an opportunity given by God? Isn't it bad to waste? Donald wanted to gather his thoughts, and such a simple thing was difficult to do at this time. It doesn't matter, the most meaningful thing in a person's life is to live a good life. It's better than dying young. At this time, I can only use the spiritual victory method to make fun of hardships. It is always good to be alive. Leave this ghost place first, you can't stay in the sewer all night. Bend over to pick up the notes on the ground and the candles used for lighting around the circle. This is his own thing. He moves his eyes to the magic circle next to him, the place where he lived in his previous life. This kind of thing will never be seen in his life. So subconsciously glanced twice. Familiar, loved. When these 2 emotions appeared in his mind, Donald shivered violently. Why did he feel good about the rotting corpse? Who was the original owner of this body? Is this what a human being should feel like? But soon he found that the object of his emotions was not these rotting corpses, but a dark red bead in them. While Donald was thinking about why he had this emotion and what the bead was, his index finger and thumb had already pinched the bead back and stuffed it directly into his waist pocket. There are too many weird things happening, and your hands don't obey. Then don't listen, as long as you don't slap yourself in the opposite direction. Holding the candle, avoiding the dirty things on the ground, and walking a few meters, Donald stopped and returned. No matter who you were before, at least now, that's me, even though I used your name, I really don't like cults or anything, so you can't keep the magic circle of the demon subduing ceremony. The place where the previous Donald Grant will perform the ceremony is chosen here. In addition to environmental considerations, it is obviously also to avoid being discovered by others. This means that this kind of behavior is equally inappropriate in this world. Accepted. Now that Donald Grant wants to live well, he naturally stays away from the existence of cults. Donald didn't know how to get up, so he could only walk forward blindly. The rotten smell around him and the occasional rattle made his mood even lower. Choose to focus back on yourself, observe your clothing, and try to find some clues about the world. On his feet are a pair of brown leather shoes, dark brown long pants, a white shirt lined inside, a brown vest over the outer layer, and a grey cloak on the outside. He searched all the pockets on his body, and in the left trouser pocket found a small bunch of keys, a copper pocket watch, and the time on it showed that it was 6:30 in the evening. In the trouser pocket on the right was a handful of loose coins, 1 shilling and 5 pence. After a little bit of conversion in my mind, it was about 150 yuan. An upward iron vertical ladder appeared in front of him. Donald put all the things in his hands back into his pockets. The strength of this body can only be said to be average, but it is no problem to climb a vertical ladder. After stepping up a few floors, his right hand he touched the manhole cover, pushed it up, and moved it to the side. In the dark alley, 2 unfamiliar faces were looking down at him. Donald's gaze stayed on their clothes for a few seconds, and then he saw the short knife in their hands glowing coldly in the moonlight. "Sorry for disturbance." Reaching out to pull the manhole cover next to him. "Great King of Shadows, we are extremely grateful for your favor." The 2 murderers looked at the lamb that came to the door and showed their respect to the of thieves. Black suspender trousers with 2 drawstrings hanging over the shoulders of a pale yellow shirt and brown domed hats, both young men, with grey stains on their faces and clothes to prove their identities as bottom and middle wandering between layers. They may be waiting for prey on the street outside, who knows that a person will emerge from the manhole cover behind them. He was forced into the corner of the alleyway through the manhole cover with a short knife. The black and grey stone bricks could smell a faint smell of coal. Because of his nervousness, Donald's eyes kept lingering on these 2 people. At this moment, his consciousness suddenly fell into a trance, which lasted for about 3 seconds, and the sight of his eyes seemed to be covered with a light red veil at the next moment. "2 gentlemen, I don't want to have a conflict with you. Grey mist is coming out of you. Don't you plan to deal with it?" Through the moonlight, looking through the red veil, Donald found that some grey mist began to escape from the shoulders and heads of the 2 men, roaming above their heads, thinking that something was wrong with their bodies, and wanted to remind them by reminding them. To salvage the situation. Due to the high level of tension, he did not realize that the problem was actually his own. Grey fog. "Mike, isn't this person a homeless person with mental problems? Will such a person have anything of value?" The 2 young thieves looked at each other, and the one on the left said in a low voice, he began to wonder if he had gone wrong. "This is his lie, look at his leather shoes and the vest under his cloak, this is not the dress of the lower class, I bet he must have a good family, he must be rich, kill him, in the last few days we may don't worry about money." Crime seems to be just an ordinary trivial matter in their mouths. In this era, killing people is not that difficult. It's just that what Donald paid attention to at this time was obviously a bit deviated from reality. He swore that he absolutely saw the grey mist above the 2 people's heads, and when they walked towards him with their knives, red blood-shots began to appear in the grey mist. "What on earth is it? Superior." Mike's Adam's apple rolled, and the low command made Donald feel a chill from the bottom of his heart, and fine goosebumps appeared on his skin. "This is a dead end, and there is no retreat at the rear. I just crossed it, so I have to die here again? Wait, no." The tip of the knife was only about 2 centimeters away from his chest. A wave of blood or something rushed into his mind. Donald stretched out his hand and shouted. Stopped. The tip of the knife stopped. The 2 thieves could only feel that the hand holding the knife was fixed in front of them, and it was no longer possible for them to move forward even a little bit. "What's going on, my sword, the devil's family, this is a heretic. Run!" Mike stared at Donald's eyes, and the next moment seemed to see a great horror. What a pair of terrifying eyes! The black eyes were deep and mysterious, and the central pupil was glowing with crimson blood and phosphorescence. When he was stared at by these eyes, fear involuntarily emerged in his heart, and the instinct of the creature made him leave, the farther the better. A ferocious expression mixed with horror appeared on his face. He threw away the weapon in his hand without hesitation, and ran out of the alley with his companions. Cough cough hiss drink. A series of unexplained whines emanated from Donald's throat as he watched the two murderers leave. A strong sense of collapse spread from all parts of his body, so much so that he fell directly to the ground, sweating out in layers. After a while Donald felt his back and underarms soaking wet. Devil's family, heretics? What do you mean? Why did they run away? The knife just now. What kind of world is this, Nima? Although Donald himself couldn't see the change in his body, he still vaguely felt something from the murderer's mouth. Leaning against the wall, enduring the trembling of his body, his thoughts diverged uncontrollably. Donald Grant is an ordinary person, at least once was an ordinary person, otherwise there must be something about this in his memory. After all, this is an absolutely impressive thing. So, where did the power that solidified the two murderers just now come from? Combined with the words he just heard and the magic circle in the sewers, Donald's face turned ashen. It was the magic circle that summoned the devil. Perhaps the images of demons that I saw in my previous life were all cold, handsome, and high profile, but that was just fiction. Just based on the place and conditions of the demon subduing ceremony, Donald can be sure that, as a creature representing the dark side of desire, the demons in this world are absolutely terrifying existences. The ceremony, successful? No, that magic formation is, the success of the ritual means that the demon did appear, although I didn't see it. But if my memory is correct, the symbol description in the circle blood ring I saw before did not mention anything about power. Giving is more about the content of sacrifice. The panic in his heart and the horror in turn acted on his body, followed by a violent cough. After all, Donald was an ordinary person in his previous life, and he suddenly came into contact with this kind of thing, without any reference to examples or knowledge in this regard. Even if he racked his brains, he still couldn't recall the knowledge of religion. There is not enough information, don't scare yourself, things are not that bad, and guessing out of thin air will only make the situation worse. Blindly speculating on things that don't have enough information to support is undoubtedly causing trouble for oneself under the current situation. The most important thing now is to go home. He needs to be familiar with and understand the world as quickly as possible, especially the situation of Donald. Just knowing the name and age is meaningless. Supporting the wall with one hand, I walked outside the alley. The street at my feet was paved with brown or grey and light red stone bricks. Said to be completely flush, but fairly neat. There are street lamps on both sides of the street, dark lamp posts, and simple glass lampshades. If you look closely, you will find that this is the most primitive kerosene lamp, which needs to be lit manually by torches. The best proof. This is the first time Donald has detailed a house in this world, Italian-like style, with flat roofs, cornices, angled protruding windowsills, erected in midair, sky corridors connecting buildings on both sides of the street, art and civilization in them. Of course, this is only a part. There are also such Gothic spire houses nearby, with curved domes. Generally speaking, the architectural style is very free. Donald, who was standing at the entrance of the alley, then stared at a fruit shop with a closed sign on the door opposite it for about 2 minutes. The dark green facade was quite fresh, the wooden frame outside the door was empty, and the fruit should have been taken back. There are still some peeled peels on the ground, which were stepped on and flattened. Why waste so much time looking at the surrounding scenery? Because Donald Grant suddenly discovered that he didn't know where his home was. What is this? It's okay to forget about other things. I don't even know where my home is. How reluctant my predecessor was to go home. Impressions of their own are so vague. This loss of memory has put Donald in a dilemma. All he can think of is the police station. The police should be able to help him find his home. The problem is that he also doesn't know where the police station is now. At this time, it was very necessary to find a passerby, so Donald simply walked along the street. Clang clang clang, there are bells echoing in the night sky in the distance. It is exactly 8 o'clock in the evening. No matter which world he was in, this time could not be counted as a rest time, so Donald soon saw the first passerby, a middle-aged man in a baggy shirt and a cloth bag on his shoulders. "Sir, I want to ask where is the nearest police station?" Donald noticed that the middle-aged man looked at him in surprise, especially after staying on his cloak for a long time, and took 2 steps back without a trace. "On Melanson Street, go straight, there's a street sign on the corner 50 meters ahead, about 2 blocks from here. Oh, you smell a little. Sorry, I have to go." UU reading www.uugonshu.com. People have a sense of smell fatigue. Donald spent a long time in the sewers and rolled around there wearing a cloak. After a simple reply, the middle-aged man left immediately. Melanson Street. Repeating the name of the place, Donald couldn't wait to take off his cloak. After seeing the sticky object behind the cloak, he hurriedly sent it to the trash can on the side of the street. The strange smell around him was relieved a lot. Walking along the street, he soon saw a road sign pointed out by passers-by. The Preston City Police Department on the 5 wooden signs outlined a road sign in black ink. "Turn right at the intersection and walk to a bridge over a river." The city of Preston is quiet and peaceful at night. At least that's how it looks from the bridge. "Grant? Is that you?" Someone nearby was calling him, and he looked in the direction of the sound. The source was under a street lamp 10 meters away. "The first thing I saw was a pair of women's short boots, and then a simple beige dress, covering the neck and elbows, and the whole body was covered tightly. The girl in front of her has fair cheeks, delicate and harmonious facial features, and those dark blue eyes shone with a soft glow in the pale yellow light. If there is anything special, it must be those 2 sharp eyebrows." The face that was supposed to be cute was inexplicably brought in the direction of being strong and capable. Donald responded and fell silent. His brows were obviously furrowed, not because the girl was obviously estranged when she addressed her. Perhaps because of the stimulation of foreign objects, some broken words and emotions began to appear in his mind. Wife. Disgust. On the bridge in the southern part of Preston, Donald met his wife. What a beautiful picture of the amnesiac reuniting with their relatives, hugging, kissing, and expressing heartfelt feelings to each other. Such a picture is almost predictable. But the actual situation is that the 2 sides maintain a high degree of restraint. Even if it is the first meeting before strangers, the atmosphere may be better. Donald kept restraint because of the disgust he had for the wife in front of him and his ignorance of the situation. "What about the girl in front of you? She seems to be in her early 20s, even though her face is calm and quiet. Why is she so reserved to the point of being on guard?" After being silent for about 2 minutes, Donald began to realize that there must be something or a contradiction between his predecessor and this girl. At this time, it was even more difficult for him to speak. "Oops. What should I do now? I don't dare to say a word. Ask her if she has eaten? Or should I tell her that I accidentally fell and knocked my head and lost my memory?" Donald instinctively realized that he would end up badly by doing so, and he wisely chose to remain silent. He is more confident than patient. "I will meet less with Freddie in the future." After a while, it was the girl who spoke first, but the amount of information was a bit large. "Who is Freddie? What is the relationship between you 2? Why did you 2 specifically tell me when you cut down on seeing each other?" And still in this reluctant compromise tone. Except for the ambiguous word Donald really didn't know how to answer it. "I agree, no problem. I agree with your approach, or say no, I disagree, your approach is wrong, and these replies are not appropriate." He wanted to avoid responses that were too subjective as much as possible. Hiding clumsiness, hiding his thoughts as much as possible about some unfamiliar matters, not letting the other party seize the opportunity. It will expose his ignorance of things, causing doubts and misunderstandings. Now Donald can't stand any temptation in the details of his life. Hey? Whatever you are, I'll explain to you one last time that my relationship with him has absolutely nothing to do with what you think. You have the right to remain suspicious. Go home. You've missing for a week. I told the neighbors that you go to a friend's house for a while. I hope you can think more before leaving home next time. I don't have much time to look around for yours trace. The girl didn't say anything more. Donald Grant's silence made her a little puzzled, because the quarrel a few days ago could be said to be very intense, but then she was relieved. Smell, obviously he has realized the disadvantage of running away from home. On the other hand, this is a good thing. Of course Donald was happy to have someone lead the way. At least he didn't have to go to the police station, and he could avoid the dilemma of needing to explain why he didn't even know where his home was. The question now is what happened between the girl in front of her and her predecessor. Judging from the feedback from memory, they are husband and wife. There is a contradiction between the two sides, and the contradiction is not small, so that Donald is going to run away from home. No, in her eyes, the runaway from home is probably Donald's preparation for his demon-subduing ceremony. Is this a time-premeditated quarrel? But it is also possible that the quarrel stimulated Donald, making him not hesitate to trade with the devil to get something. There is also a key point. After the quarrel, why did Donald run away from home like a young daughter-in-law, and it's not usually women who go back to their parents' home? 233 Iris Street. In front of it is a small two-story building, from top to bottom, with a flat roof and a small balcony. It is built with brown and red bricks. There are many potted plants on the protruding windowsill on the second floor. The door on the first floor is made of mahogany, with a house number hanging on it, and other houses on the left and right sides. The structure is similar. It seems to be a living area. Entering the door, the home is clean and tidy, with umbrella stands, shoe cabinets, and corridors. This is the first part. The end of the corridor is the kitchen, the living room on the right, and the stairs on the left. Grant, I don't want to quarrel with you anymore. This is your living expenses this month, a total of 10 shillings, an increase of 1 shilling from the past. This is the last time I will give you living expenses. You have graduated from university for nearly half a year, then you have to find a job yourself. I remember you studied religious studies? You can try to interview for church paperwork, or you have to start taking responsibility for yourself anyway. The money bag was handed over, and Donald accepted it subconsciously. This action was somewhat smooth, and the formulaic tone made him feel a little cold, as if it was a boss paying the workers monthly wages. The girl looked at him with undisguised alienation and disgust. Donald felt it. In fact, after knowing that his predecessor was still asking for money from a girl of the same age 6 months after graduation, he also despised himself in the bottom of his heart. The bedroom should be upstairs. When the girl walked to the living room, Donald did not follow him, but walked up the stairs alone. He needed to organize his thoughts and figure out his current situation and his own situation. Talking to anyone before this and expressing an opinion is somewhat out of place. The rigid relationship between husband and wife is a good buffer at this time. However, when he was halfway up the stairs, Donald's eyes inadvertently caught sight of the sofa in the living room, and he suddenly realized a problem that he had ignored before. In my memory, Donald's parents died in a fire in a grocery store 4 years ago. He and the girl should have been married in recent years. After all, they were both young. According to common sense, after marriage, she is Donald's family, and strictly speaking, she is the only family member at present. Shouldn't she cherish the lost and found relatives? Even if there are irreconcilable contradictions between the two sides, even if it is hatred, this is a way to deepen the impression, isn't it? Why is the impression so vague? Even when I saw her, there were only words and emotions that were so lacking that they could be described as barren. Other than that, there are no memories that can be recalled. His palms suddenly tightened and he grasped the armrests. Donald vaguely sensed something was wrong, but he was unable to grasp the fleeting inspiration. Gently rubbed his temples, continued to lift his feet, and finally reached the second floor. It was another corridor with 3 rooms in total. Donald pursed his lips and took out the keychain in his pocket. There were 3 keys on it. One was the door. One of the keys should be the bedroom. He was going to try to open the door, but in fact he didn't have to be so troublesome, because just walking to the first door, he saw the number hanging on it. Donald Grant. She took a step back and looked at the room next to her. Sure enough, there was a house number on it. Infinita Alfred, this is the girl's name, Donald said to himself. They're living apart, and it's possible, never lived together. Brush Lala turning the wheel, the water sprayed from the metal shower head poured on his body. Donald, who was performing the demon subduing ceremony, had not taken a bath for a while. The clean and comfortable feeling made him feel better. Just in the shower. In the upper left corner of the bathroom, there is a mechanical water meter, made of dark brown material, with some gears exposed inside the dial. Watching the numbers on it beat, Donald shut off the water flow in time, stood in front of the mirror, and looked at himself inside. The skin is lighter in color, and the light golden hair is divided into the ears, which is different from the emerald green eyes of his wife, the high nose bridge and the thin lips. Overall, the facial features are deep and three-dimensional. If the stubble on his chin is removed, in the words of his previous life, it is entirely possible for him to rely on his face to eat. This is who I am now. Staring at himself in the mirror, Donald adapted to his current state, but the trance that had appeared in the alley before struck again at this time. Reading www.yuyugonshu.com. I closed my eyes, opened them, my skin in the mirror was completely pale in an instant, the whites of my eyes turned black, and my emerald green eyes gradually turned red. Do not! Roaring and punching the mirror, there was someone downstairs, so he deliberately lowered his voice and restrained his strength at the same time. The next second, the self in the mirror returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. Palms, arms, neck, chest, back, thighs and even buttocks, Donald, who had taken a bath, was naked in a circle in front of the mirror. If there were outsiders, the title of pervert would probably have to be taken seriously. He has watched a lot of movies in his last life. Regardless of whether they are true or false, there will be more or less marks on the people who are parasitized by demons or who have signed contracts. He wants to confirm his status. The result was that there was no change, the body was still his body, and the scene just now seemed to be just his hallucination. Shave off the stubble, put on clean clothes, there are not many things in the bedroom, a single bed against the wall, the plaid bedding and white pillows are neatly stacked on it. A writing desk with stationery by the window, a wooden chair with a cushion stuffed with cotton. A wooden bookcase filled with various religious books, in addition to a chaise longue and a bedside table with a radio on it. After a brief tour and exploration of some corners, Donald began to sort out the situation. Notes, dark red beads, this is something taken out of the sewer. Several books were taken out of the bookcases, which were about religion, social environment, and especially talking about the existence of demons. And the last key, a diary found in the bottom drawer of the bedside table, with a few pages of text in it. May 15th. Today is the gathering of our religious department. The achievements of my classmates make me feel ashamed. A considerable number of them already have a decent career, and I still rely on the help of Infinita. She is a good girl with a body. The advantages are countless, and I look forward to furthering our relationship. May 16th. Ronan found me. He agreed very much with my religious views at yesterday's meeting, and was willing to help me find a job in religion. He was really a warm-hearted gentleman, and I readily agreed. May 18th. Through Ronan's introduction, I met the mysterious existence, and they praised my education, which made me very happy. We exchanged religions, and he warmly invited me to join, but I still need to consider. After all, joining religious organizations without any official paperwork are legally prohibited, but it would improve my knowledge of religious studies, I'm sure of that. June 13, I noticed that Infinita met the man with no shame again. This is the 5th time this month, even between us. This is intolerable. I'm angry, but there are more important things to do. June 22, we had a quarrel. Am I thinking too much? June 23, will I change my destiny if I get the reward? I'm not sure, but no matter what, I want to gain strength and I won't allow anyone to trample on my dignity, absolutely not. Many pages were torn from the diary spread out on the table, so that the entire diary looked a little irregular. Donald, who was watching the diary, did not know when he was lying unconscious on the table. His physical strength was not as good as he imagined, and the repeated impact of reality and extreme mental exhaustion made him fall asleep while reading the notes. The body seemed to be thrown into a bottomless pit, falling and falling again, until vaguely discernible images began to appear around it. There is a log table with a diameter of half a meter. 3 people are sitting around, and the perspective is somewhere next to it. Discussions are taking place on the round table. Donald, this is an opportunity for us to change our destiny. As long as you nod your head, our plan can proceed smoothly, and we will receive unprecedented rewards. On the round table, a young man with swollen eyes and a slumped nose, with an uncomplimentable appearance, was excitedly saying something to the young man on the opposite side who kept his head down. Is that I? Is this Donald's dream, and what happened to the me? Some impressive memory fragments did not disappear completely, but reappeared in sleep in the form of dreams. Ronan, I want to think about it again. This kind of thing is illegal, if something happens. I called him Ronan, and this was the person who introduced I to the cult. Make a note of his appearance to make sure you can recognize him next time you see him. You shouldn't have any hesitation. You are a follower of the Lord. This is a manifestation of your lack of faith. Donald, you have to make a choice immediately and go against the will of the Lord. You should know what kind of punishment there will be. The person sitting on the right spoke at this time, with a low tone and a kind of silent deterrent force. Since he had his back to Donald, if he wanted to see his face clearly, he had to change his position, so the perspective followed the thought. Action to change. However, at the moment when he was about to see the other's face, I, who had been keeping his head down, suddenly turned his head, and the pair of black blood pupils stared at Donald with a grim face and clenched teeth. I was angry. Furious. Do not. That's not me. Ah! Hissed the awakened Donald, jerked back, his knees hit the table with a dull sound, and pain followed. The next second, Donald felt a deep fear. That furious face, he never imagined that the quiet and gentle self in the mirror would have such an expression. Pushing back his chair, he glanced at the pocket watch on the table. At 3 o'clock in the morning, he saw that the window in front of the desk was completely dark. It was the darkest time before dawn. Staring at the notes on the table for a while, he picked up the pen beside him. He was going to write down some content from last night and his dream. He is now in a state of confusion. Concentrating these clues on paper will allow him to make better judgments. The words in the diary in front of him are the words of this world, but the words written on the tip of the pen are the square words of the previous life. This is Donald's intention. He wants to make sure that no one but himself knows the content. In a foreign land, the heart to guard against others is indispensable. Diary message, Infinita's charity. Since it's a husband and wife, why use the word charity? Ronan's introduction, cult believer, illegal church organization, cult, Infinita, and a certain man frequent meetings, Pharaoh, more important things. The follow-up diary was torn up. This should happen in the middle of June 13 and June 22. Rewards that can get power, the one that killed I demon subduing ceremony. Dream message, Ronan's instigation. Oppression by unknown people, the thing they asked for is probably the so-called more important thing. List the information, and then find the key to it. If Donald wants to live well in this world, he must figure out some things, such as the nature of a cult. The predecessor participated in this organization. Generally speaking, this kind of underground association that is not accepted by law is difficult to get in and even harder to get out. In order to ensure their secrecy, some actions within the cult that hurt those who try to leave the sect are simply at your fingertips. After all, as long as they are discovered by the government and the Orthodox sect, they will be devastated in the shortest possible time. Yes, Donald knew from the books on the table that the sects in this world are extremely powerful. There are no less than 20 official sects in the entire Ryan Empire. Most of these sects have their own parishes scattered throughout the Lane Empire. Believers in major sects and sects range from princes and nobles to low-level civilians, covering almost the entire social class. It can be said that believers are the foundation of every sect. Those who hide in the dark and do sneaky deeds all day to attract believers, but are unwilling to assume social responsibilities, are naturally detested by the government and Orthodox sects. We must find a way to break away from this cult organization. Donald wants to have a normal life, that's what he has to do. He doesn't want to die in a cult ritual inexplicably, and he doesn't want to die under the siege of the Orthodox sect. The Inquisition mentioned in the book is really not a good place. It's just that his current understanding of this cult is only in the memory fragments of diaries and dreams, and everything can only be explored slowly. Putting this aside for the time being, Donald is still facing a very serious problem, and that is the change in his body. Did you really sign a contract with the devil and gain some kind of power? Thinking of this, Donald involuntarily recalled his situation in the alley last night. He saw the grey fog and bloodshot above the heads of the two murderers, and in the follow-up, the power that could control their actions erupted. If I can use this power, will it be helpful for the next action? The depressed mood is inexplicably boosted. As a transmigrator, if there is anything else that can make him feel safe in this world, it is only this power of unknown origin. At least not nothing, right? For the time being, I haven't found any problems with using this power other than physical fatigue. Donald is not pedantic. In order to survive, he doesn't mind trying some methods that he has never been exposed to before. Taking a deep breath, he stretched out his hand and placed it on the table. Donald was ready to try. He remembered that he had seen a movie. The protagonist was a skeleton who could drive a motorcycle. They seemed to have made a deal with the devil, and then gained strength. How about learning from your predecessors? Cough, I now imagine myself communicating with the fire element, condensing them in my hands. Is there any smoke? The wind element, the thunder element, the water element. I tried it over and over, but none of those legendary element energies responded to Donald. Looking at the unresponsive palm, Donald's mood fell into depression again. He twisted his wrist helplessly, glanced at the table casually, and immediately stopped on the pen. If elemental energy does not respond, what about pure mental energy? The finger pointed to the middle of the pen, and his mind kept imagining the appearance of the pen standing up. The next moment Donald noticed the change in his body, and a strange feeling came from the center of his eyebrows, as if his thoughts had suddenly become invisible. Reading www.yuyugonshu.com. Things that actually exist are extending from the fingertips. Must be compared with something similar to the shape of water flow. This is not to say that Donald's brain is flooded, but his mind power or mental power extends to the body in an invisible state of water flow. The amount is not much, it is probably just the flow of the syringe outlet after removing the needle, and the finger will is an export medium. I can't say how powerful this power is, but it does exist, and after a few seconds, Donald felt the outline of the pen in his mind. The position of the fingers remained the same. First, the nib trembled, and then the entire pen swayed. Under Donald's full of surprise, the pen was successfully erected. Amazing! Am I a superpower? The happy mood made Donald briefly forget the current predicament, and the distraction made his mental power immediately lose control. What followed was another feeling of exhaustion, which was much lighter than the state in the alley, but still made Donald feel annoyed in his chest. Just holding a pen makes him tired, and Donald was caught off guard by this weak superpower. After resting for a while, Donald decided to try again. This time the goal was to float, and he was looking for something lighter. Dark red beads. However, what happened this time was something Donald never thought of. When his mental power touched the dark red bead, the bead seemed to be activated and began to emit a light red mist, which did not dissipate, but attached to Donald's mental power. "No, this doesn't belong to you." Donald lowered his head suddenly. His expression was a familiar grim expression. His scarlet pupils reappeared, but he roared extremely obscure language. Dong 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 dong. There was a knock at the door, and Donald, who was leaning on the chair, woke up suddenly, wiped the non-existent saliva from the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were blank. "Grant!" A crisp sound came from outside the door, awakening Donald from his sluggish state. "Yes, is something wrong?" hurriedly replied. "I'll be away for a day or two. Remember to lock when you go out." "Okay, I know. Infinita is going to be away for a day or two, that's great." Donald was worried about how to face her next night. He needed time to adjust to his identity. It would be better to have a chance to be alone at this time. Infinita in the corridor was a little stunned when she heard the response from the wooden door. In the past, if he left for a long time, he would definitely ask what he was doing. I didn't expect his attitude after running away from home this time. There has been such a big change. Not only did he not have any questions or inquiries, but there seemed to be some joy in his tone. She didn't think much about it. She was very busy. She turned around and went downstairs. A carriage had stopped outside the house, and a handsome man in a well-dressed silk top hat was waiting for her. "Infinita, today you are as beautiful as ever." The man stood beside the car door and stretched out his hand towards Infinita. "Thank you for the compliment, Freddie, let's go, time is short." Infinita didn't show too many expressions. She replied politely and stepped directly into the carriage. "Yes, my lady." When Infinita got up, Freddie turned his eyes and looked up at the windowsill. There was a person standing there, so he raised his hand and waved lightly, greeting him simply, with a bright smile on his face. "Is this person Freddie?" "It really has a close relationship. The real Donald has died in the sewer. Now, he doesn't care if Infinita betrayed the marriage. After all, the so-called relationship between husband and wife is false." At best, he was a little sick of Freddie's provocative smile. In this way, there is indeed only one husband and wife between Infinita and her predecessor. Otherwise, she would not have done such a thing so blatantly. Yesterday, she said that she would cut down on seeing each other. Today, she got into the same car. Why didn't she file for divorce? What is the purpose of continuing to maintain this false marriage in this form? She wants some kind of non-money benefit from me. Donald muttered to himself, thinking about it, this is the greatest possibility. What do you have that makes her covet, and she doesn't hesitate to stay by her side in such a way of paying for her reputation? Conversely, what was the reason for the predecessor to be willing to accept this nominal relationship? The bright sunlight through the window imprinted on Donald's exposed half of his face, and the other half of his face behind the window frame was still hidden in the shadows. The continuous problems made him a little irritable. Sitting back on the wooden chair, Donald picked up the dark red beads without any change. The mental power control of the beads in the early morning accidentally triggered the resonance between the two parties. At that time, Donald felt that a cold energy entered the body through his mental power, and then he changed from the first controller of the body to the first bystander. 3 people can feel everything, but can't do anything to deal with it, because there is another thought that controls the body, until the mental power is cut off, and the dark red beads return to their original state. The devil's consciousness is hidden in his body. It's really troublesome. Do I have the potential to be the hero of a bitter drama? I feel the malice from all over the world. When I woke up in the sewer, I was a member of a cult, and my memory was so poor that I couldn't even find a home. I finally met my wife. She was very beautiful, and I thought there was a turn for the better. Suspect, a woman with some ulterior purpose. This is miserable enough, and now it is discovered that there is a very likely demon in the body. The more I think about it, the more I feel uneasy, but what can I do? I pick up the pen and write the next sentence in the notebook. 10 seconds later, he got out of the chair, fell face down, and fell directly on the bed. From last night to now, this is the one time he touched the bed. Donald wanted to just fall asleep like this, and everything returned to normal after waking up. But this is impossible, because there are some things in his mind all the time, and he doesn't even have the slightest sleepiness. Silently recite in my heart, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The time to complain is over. Now is the time to struggle. Do things one by one, and solve the difficulties one by one. Now the most important thing, eat. Buried in the quilt, he muttered something, adjust his emotions, take practical actions to change the current difficult situation, at least do what he can do. Putting his hands on the bed, he jumped up again, rushed into the bathroom, wiped his face fiercely, put on his clothes, picked up the book The Enemy of Religion on the table and went out. On the notebook spread out on the desk was written in neat square words, if you don't change, nothing will change. This sentence is not a famous aphorism, but it is Donald's favorite sentence in his previous life. The meaning is very simple. When encountering difficulties, you can complain or lament. As long as you have the courage to act, everything will turn around. The big deal is to die again. He is someone who has come here. Instead of going downstairs directly, his footsteps stopped at Infinita's door. Donald faced the wooden door with the nameplate hanging in front of him, his hand was in the air, and he almost touched the doorknob, trying to figure out Infinita's identity. Is the day or two away a good opportunity? After thinking about it again and again, she still couldn't press her hand. Infinita has lived with her for so long. According to her predecessor's suspicious personality, in such a long time, she is likely to have the same thoughts as now, but the fact is that no useful message was left. Searching her room hastily, Donald couldn't guarantee that he could exit without moving. Once discovered, the separation of the two sides may be the best outcome. What he fears is that the apparent harmony will be broken and an unpredictable situation will emerge. Tearing up the warm face, what is hidden underneath? Can he afford it now? Go downstairs and walk into the kitchen on the first floor. On the right side of the door is a large coal stove, about 2 meters wide, with several covered iron pots on it. On the opposite wall is a kitchen rack, loaded with dishes and cutlery. He opened the iron cover under the coal stove, and there was a part of coal that had already cooled down. He reached in and wiped the stove wall. There was only a thin layer of ash, which was obviously not commonly used. It means that the last time the family had a dinner together may have been a month or more back. Surprisingly, there was a plate on the table with half a forearm bread on it, and a glass of milk beside it. She took 2 quick steps to the closet, turned her eyes around, and found a quilt with water stains and a plate in the same condition. So this is for me. Still maintaining a certain etiquette, a good thing, at least it means that she doesn't want to ruin this situation in a short time. He opened the book in his hand on the table, tore off a piece of bread and put it in his mouth. The taste was flat, and there was only the aroma of simple wheat baking. Fortunately, Donald is not a gourmet. He doesn't have much requirements for food. The content of the books is what he cares more about. The cover of the book The Enemy of Religion is a hard leather cover, and it is recorded in a floating way that a man dressed in a plain church robe, holding a cross sword and stabbing a person who fell to the ground. The hands and teeth of the Earthman have mutated into some kind of terrifying creature. Donald involuntarily glanced at his fingers and licked his teeth with his tongue, for fear that he would also undergo a sudden mutation. This book was at the bottom of the bedroom bookcase, and he took a lot of effort to get it out. The above records some of the more taboo and hatred content in today's religions, such as a certain behavior that violates the teachings. Just like what Donald thought, reading www.uyugonshu.com mentioned the existence of demons. Only when you are close to evil can you know good. Only by understanding how terrifying and evil the devil is, will believers discover how great and merciful the teachings of religion are. Well, the soul of a person who deals with the devil will be infected with evil, and the price of desire is the emptiness and harm of the soul. When a person has a free connection with the devil, then we call him incomplete, evil creature that has lost its human essence. At this time the believers will go to battle, beat his head, pierce his heart. As he read the contents of the book, even though it was early summer, Donald still shuddered, feeling the threat hanging over his head. You must not let others know that you have had contact with the devil, or your head will be blown off. Drink a mouthful of milk and be shocked. He didn't stop reading. Donald had a hunch that he could find some ways to deal with demon possession. When people are entangled by demons without relying on their own will, we also have a solution. This kind of method is not accessible to ordinary people due to its own mystery and particularity. There will be an explanation in the third edition of Expel the Evil, and I won't go into details here. What a fool! The milk in my mouth was so hung that it didn't come out directly. I thought I could find a way, but I didn't expect this kind of book to have such a small advertisement inside, so I turned to the back of the book. Driehagen Press, 1806, author, Richard Channing Chebman. He quickly ate the rest of the bread and put the plate and quilt into the pool first. Donald wanted to figure out how to eliminate the demonic thoughts in his body in the shortest possible time. Corner Bookstore, number 256 Iris Street. The origin of this store's name, in Donald's opinion, is probably because of their geographical location, located at the end of Iris Street, next to Santee Street, which is a commercial block, far away. If you look in the past, you can see people coming and going in and out of the store. Jingle bell, the copper bell at the door rang under the beating of the metal picks. When entering the door, only Onette heard of the bookshelves placed vertically on the counter could be seen vaguely. At the front of these bookshelves were several iron shelves. The newspapers of major publishing houses are stacked on top of each other, and the smell of ink is a little heavy, and the atmosphere of literature seems to be coming. Passing through the bookshelf and walking directly to the inside, the store manager was sitting behind the counter, a middle-aged man with brown-red hair, a rough face wearing round frame glasses, a mustache, and a flax vest. Hold a cigarette and puff. Donald stepped forward and noticed that he was holding a newspaper in his hand. The page on it was a line of bold characters, accumulation of capital and precise investment. This is a bookstore owner who focuses on economic development. Please let me know what book you value. The price at the back of the book is the actual price. The middle-aged man raised his head and said a simple sentence. Noticing that Donald was not holding any merchandise in his hand, he lowered his head and continued to read the newspaper. Actually, I want to buy the book Expel the Evil, and I also need the newspapers from June 13 to June 22. I don't know if there is any in the store. There are 10 bookshelves and thousands of books around. He only knows the title of a book, and he doesn't know when to find it. There are also important events mentioned in the diary. Since the pages were torn by the predecessor did it during that time. Nothing left any trace. Newspapers may be a good carrier. News agencies in this era should have already displayed a strong ability to collect information. The major events or special events that happened in those days will be recorded. Exorcism of Evil? Listening to the name, this is not ordinary. Is it a religious book? The store manager glanced at Donald with some doubts, with a hint of scrutiny. Yes, I am a student of the Department of Religion at Goethe University, and I am currently researching this knowledge. The title of college student is still very useful, at least as a scholar of the religion department. It is not suspicious to want to buy some books on religion. I'm so sorry, I just took over this bookstore. My father told me that the book in this store is only economical and entertainment, and does not sell any religious books. My father is in this bookstore, has been in this bookstore for nearly 15 years, and he is very clear about every corner, so I think his words are credible. Maybe you can go to the bookstore opened by the church, and what you want should be there. I can find them. As for the newspapers from the 13th to the 22nd, I have them here, but because they are expired, they are all stored in the warehouse. I can take you to get them. Do you need them? The market for religious books is not large among the common people. People with low incomes may go to the churches of major churches to participate in worship while they have their own beliefs, but asking them to pay for books that do not have much practical effect, it is impossible. Such a bookstore serving the common people will not spend money to buy some unsellable goods. Then buy a newspaper. Books are temporarily unavailable, and newspapers are also available. Okay, wait a minute, I'll let my father come out to see the shop. The store manager turned around and opened the wooden door behind him, and then he could hear calls from inside. Behind the bookstore was their residence. After a while, the store manager came out with obvious joy on his face. "Sir, I think today is a lucky day for the two of us. My father said that there happened to be a copy of Expel the Evil in the warehouse. He will take you there." Just as he was talking, the store manager opened the small wooden door next to the counter. The warehouse he was talking about was actually the basement of the house, in the back room. "Thank you very much." Donald soon met the store manager's father, an old man with grey hair. The wrinkles on the corners of his eyes and cheeks were already obvious, and his back was slightly curved, but he still looked energetic. "Ken Antoine, it's a pleasure to meet you." "Donald Grant, I am the same. I didn't expect you to have Expel the Evil here. It saves a lot of time for me." The old man stretched out his hand first, and Donald hurriedly shook his hand, bowing slightly to show his respect, and this action made the smile on Ken's face even deeper. "It's really a very coincidence. In fact, I only have this book in my bookstore. It has been in the warehouse for many years. Because of some things, I kept it for a long time. It should have been returned to the religious bookstore. You have to understand that such a special book, because few people buy it, and the print volume is very small. I remember that when I went to buy it specially, I saw that there were only about 10 copies in the other party's warehouse, and the other party still. It's strange to ask me who is buying the book and why I bought the book in a serious way. When I get older, I like to recall the past. This is a common habit of the elderly. Ken seems to have a special memory of this book, especially deep." Donald followed behind him, thinking about this question. Through the words of the old man, he could know that the print volume of this book is very small, and most people would not buy it. That book also seems to have a strong purpose in it. It's like an introduction book about eating crabs. It describes how to eat crabs throughout. People who buy this kind of book think that they are people who have a need for eating crabs themselves, right? This means that the person who asked the old man to buy the book Expulsion of Evil was probably also threatened by some evil force, and like himself, thought of solving this problem through religious methods. The basement was under the utility room next to the kitchen. Holding the copper ring, he pulled the wooden cover open to let the sunlight illuminate the entrance. Ken took matches and a kerosene lamp from the side and went down the stairs. "Mr. Grant, do you want newspapers from the 13th to the 22nd? "Yes, because of busy affairs in those days, I haven't had a chance to watch it. I want to make up for it, or else I won't have a conversation with anyone." Ken was carrying a kerosene lamp, and he lighted the hanging kerosene lamp in the basement. "A lot of dust has accumulated. I have to look for that book, Mr. Grant. You can sort out the newspapers and choose what you want. Our newspapers are folded according to the date, and the newspapers that no one buys are accumulated and unified. Sold to a junkyard. Kin stretched out his hand and pointed out the pile of newspapers that were about the height of his calf. Donaldson pulled them out one by one next to him. There was some repetition, but not much. Mr. Antoine, I would like to ask about the situation of the people who asked you to buy the book Expulsion of Evil. Are they also religious students like me? I'm a little curious why they bought half of it and then didn't want it. While collecting the newspapers, Donald bewildered and asked the last person who came here to buy Expel the Evil. Evil exists? No, he's not a student, just an ordinary person, but I'm very impressed with him, because when he came to the bookstore, his face was very bad, not the same as when he was sick or tired. That's kind of, I don't know what words to use to describe it. Kin frowned in his memories. Even though several years had passed, he still did not forget that scene. It was a light rain, the air was dull, and the man's pleading and weakness were the main reasons why he agreed to buy this book for him to go to church. The reason, otherwise he would not buy this book alone, especially on the premise that its price is not cheap. He paused for a while, and then continued, it's not that he didn't buy the book. In fact, he took the book the day I brought it, but 5 days later, he returned it, saying that he wanted me to keep it for me. If someone wants to buy it in the future, just give it to him directly, the mutual help of the victims, I remember he said that at the time. Aid the victim. How was his condition at the time? Fate, Donald sighed in his heart, reading www.uuganshu. It turns out that he is not the only one in this world who is troubled by this, and from the initial physical condition of both parties, his condition should be better than that of the gentleman. It's very good, at least in a good mood, haha, it seems that my memory has not completely degenerated, I found it, it belongs to you now, it is wrapped in parchment, and he gave it to me, saying that it can ensure that the book will not be stolen. The moths fell out, and when I got it, I put it in the cardboard box together. He took out the thing in his memory from the worn cardboard box, turned and handed it to Donald. Perhaps he noticed his gaze, Ken Antoine explained. Can I open it and take a look? He patted off some of the dust that had accumulated on the surface. Donald held the parchment outside the book with both hands. The smooth touch was very abrasive. Of course, it's yours now, but I suggest you look up there, the light here is too dark for your eyes, and there are tables and chairs for reading by the window in the bookstore, as long as you are willing to pay 2 francs, halfpence, about 5 yuan, I can also add a cup of black tea for you. Khan set out to extinguish the kerosene lamp in the basement. Donald held the newspaper under his right arm and tore off the small rope wrapped around the book. After several years of squeezing, the parchment had completely adhered to the book. Spreading out the parchment, before he could look at the book, he was attracted by some symbols on the parchment. This is... Eyes widened, Donald clenched the parchment with a corner and murmured softly. What's wrong? Ken Antoine on the stairs turned around, his hearing seemed to be fine. It's nothing, I'm just surprised by the texture of the parchment, Mr. Antoine, how much do these things add up to? The action of closing the parchment was so hasty that the newspaper under his arm almost fell off. There were rows of shops around. Donald, who was walking on the right side of the street, was holding a cloth bag with books in one hand and weighing the remaining coins in his pocket in the other. It's so expensive. It cost Donald 1 shilling to buy the book Expel the Evil, which is a bit outrageous. When he first learned the price, he even had a slight suspicion that the store manager was defrauding. However, after seeing the exact price tag on the back of the book, I have to admit that what is rare is more expensive. There are still about 15 shillings of the remaining money, which is given by Infinita this month, as well as previous savings. For ordinary people, as long as this money is saved, it can support 2 months of life, but in Donald's eyes, this money is absolutely not enough, he has too many things to do. Because he had other things to do, he didn't stay in the bookstore for a long time, and he only drank half of the black tea that Ken Antoine brought. In this limited time, he discovered the reason why the price of this book is so expensive. The book Expel the Evil does mention the solution to dealing with demon possession or entanglement. This method is not as mysterious as it is imagined, and it can even be said that it can be done at any time, as long as there is money. Church baptism. It is mentioned in the book that any Orthodox church will provide baptism for believers and use the power of gods to expel evil existences. This kind of ceremony requires believers to pay a certain price. According to the different baptism and purification rituals, there are different prices and requirements. The book mentions the Silver Moon Church, which has a parish in North Berkshire, and their internal baptism ceremony is the cheapest. It also costs 5 gold pounds, the most expensive can even reach nearly 100 gold pounds. The effect is very good. It is said that as long as you undergo baptism, it is not only effective in expelling evil, but even the most low-level baptism, such as a common cold, fever, and other minor ailments, will improve in a short time. As for the most advanced baptism, Donald didn't dare to look down. For Donald, who is currently a homeless person, the lowest level of christening is an extravagant request. For 3 gold pounds, he has to maintain a state of not eating or drinking under the premise of receiving Infinity's 4-month aid to save it. And it's not necessarily useful. Making money has suddenly become the most important thing, not only to solve physical problems. As a man with able-bodied limbs, Donald has a grudge in accepting his wife's assistance, especially under the premise that her behavior is unclear. So Donald came to the commercial street and paid attention to the job sign outside the store. He needed a job to support his private activities while maintaining a normal life. However, no matter what world you are in, the right job is not so easy to find. It is suitable for civilians, there are no professional skills requirements, and the salary is high. Does this kind of work really exist? The content of his predecessor's studies in the university was extremely professional, which meant that after Donald graduated, the good jobs he could find were limited, and the major counterparts included some primary jobs in the church. No. And those high-paying jobs that civilians can get, such as lawyers, government workers, etc., require a long period of professional knowledge study, and Donald, who has zero foundation, does not have so many vacancies. As for the last high-risk, high-reward certain jobs, they are all recorded in the code, not to mention that Donald has no way, even if there is, he would not dare. A pub might be a good place to go. Compared with other jobs, the professional requirements of this job are not high. In the work, you can contact people from all walks of life, and you can collect a lot of information. Besides, there should be tips in this era. Compared with the nearby ready-to-wear store or grocery store, an extra income. With the mentality of trying, Donald came to the Oak Tavern on Letty's Street, 2 blocks away from Iris Street. Unlike Gazong Street, this is a more entertaining neighborhood, with several pubs and a large number of nightingales. Shop. Pleasant Night, Beauty Hotel. An undisguised store name, even though it's morning, there are still a few stores with their doors half open. The Oak Tavern is the largest shop in the street. Above the door is a wooden board hung on an iron shelf, carved with a brown oak fruit. Standing outside, you can see a few scattered customers sitting in the tavern. The waiter with his sleeves up is sweeping the masonry floor, sprinkling some water from time to time, and pressing down the floating dust. Behind the bar stands a tall, thin man with a white face and no beard, concentrating on wiping the wine glass. He lowered his head and straightened his clothes, and took a photo in the window next to him, confirming that he had a good image. He was so handsome that he was more than enough to be a bartender, right? Mr. Grant, I'm sorry, we don't have a shortage of people now. In fact, if you come here 3 days in advance, I will sign you without hesitation. You know, there are quite a few Nightingale shops around here. My lady has no resistance to a young man like you, but I can't dismiss the new waiter. We signed a contract for half a year, whoever breaches the contract will have to pay a penalty of 1 gold pound, which is not a small amount. Donald could only accept the reply given by the store manager. He might have a good image, but it wouldn't cost the store manager an extra £1 of liquidated damages. The new waiter only worked for 3 days and did nothing. Giving someone £1 for no reason? The store manager said it would be heart-wrenching for several nights. Well, it seems that my luck is not very good, bye. You can't do it here, you can only try your luck elsewhere. Hey, Mr. Grant, don't you know? Our Oak Tavern is an intermediary. Can you see the square wooden sign over there? The papers on it are messages from some people, recruiting, entrusting. There are many good jobs among them, such as Mr. Louduff in Plum Lane, who found a clerical job here, with a monthly salary of £2. The manager of the tavern spared no effort in recommending his own notice board. It was the idea that his wife came up with. As long as you pay 5p, you can post your request on the notice board. There is a lot of traffic in the tavern. It's obviously much better to announce it on the street outside. Donald's footsteps turned back again. Now there is no goal anyway, and it doesn't take much time to look at it. The area of the notice board is about 1 square meter, it is close to the wall, the height is at the position of the chest of ordinary people, and there is a cloth strip with black characters on it, if you have no intention, please do not touch. The house is leaking and needs the help of a worker who has experience in repairing roofs. Salary, 6p. The cat-hunting revelation, the cat in the house was lost, the last time I saw it was on Gazong Street, the coat was pure white, with a pinch of pale golden miscellaneous hair on its forehead, salary, 5 shillings. Barn handling, the barn on the farm needs people to help carry grain bags, manual work, requires adult men, salary, 1 shilling. His eyes lingered on these posted notices. He couldn't repair the house. It was always no problem to move the barn. There are other manual jobs. You can also earn some money. The pay is not high. It is something that people at the bottom can do. Even if the gentlemen starve to death, they will not take off their vests and roll up their sleeves to carry grain bags. Donald didn't take this into consideration. After all, the education he received was different, and labor is the most honorable, not to mention that now is not the time to care about other people's opinions. Mr. Grant, have you found a job you like? The store manager was holding glue and paper in his hand. This was a new commission. Donald took a step aside and watched him post it, reading the contents. Assistant recruitment, the firm needs a certain level of education, active thinking, and can classify and extract information from some criminal cases. Weekly salary, £1. Blinking his eyes twice, Donald repeatedly confirmed that the 2 words before the £1 in the remuneration was the weekly salary, not the monthly salary. It's a good job, isn't it? Just look at that. Noticing Donald's surprise, the store manager took a photo of the notice, and then took out a piece of paper the size of a slap. It was a supplement to the recruitment of assistants. For those who are interested in recruiting assistants, there are preconditions. Translate the following text. This is an ancient text. The client said that only those who have studied in this area can understand the meaning of these sentences. Uyuganshu www.uyuganshu.com is the assistant he is looking for. The place where the manager's finger was placed was a piece of black text or a symbol, and Donald's eyes focused. He knows the meaning of this sentence, the source is not the memory of the predecessor, but another existence. Given by the gods, born with it. Softly reciting the meaning of the text symbols, for the first time Donald felt that those demon memories that tortured him were still somewhat beneficial. This became his advantage. For some words that ordinary people could not understand at all, he could instantly know the words in them. Mean. What did you say? X2 The store manager looked at Donald in surprise. He seemed to hear strange words from the young man's mouth. At the same time, behind the two of them, there was a clear voice. The meaning of this sentence is, God gave it, I was born with it. Can I take over this job entrustment? Repeating this sentence again, Donald reached out his hand to take off the commission he had just glued on, but was subconsciously blocked by the store manager. Mr. Grant, this is a job entrustment and requires integrity. If you are just trying casually, I suggest that it is better not to tear this entrustment. The man in front of him was too young, and he was someone who needed to find a low-level job like a waiter in a tavern. The store manager didn't think Donald could interpret the text correctly, he just thought he was just saying that he wanted to go. I tried, so I blocked it. He's right, that's what the sentence means. Exactly. Before Donald could explain, the voice behind the two affirmed Donald's translation, and his tone rose with a little surprise. The commission that was just released, and the translator was found so smoothly. Is today his lucky day? The person in front of him has a slender figure, strong cheeks, sharp edges and corners, and the slender and straight hooked nose, making him look resolute and determined. The only thing that doesn't match is those eyes. It's not that they look bad, but they're not as deep and quiet as imagined, but they're a little bit smart and cunning. Charlotte Swift, private detective, paranormal consultant, occult lover. The title on the business card in his hand made Donald inexplicably have a sense of sight. He wanted to ask him if he knew a retired soldier named Watson, but when he said it, the content changed. Hello, my name is Donald Grant, and I have a little research on ancient texts. Mr. Grant. I'll still call you Donald. You can call me Sherlock to be kinder. After all, our relationship may go further in the future, okay? Sherlock's tone was cadence and he spoke at a faster rate than ordinary people. He was very fond of Donald, who could understand the ancient words that he couldn't understand. Can. Donald has never been too particular about his address, as long as he can recognize people. After confirming that the most critical ancient text translation has been passed, the two sides will enter a formal interview session. Sherlock's requirements for recruiting assistants are not as strict as imagined, or the most stringent level is in Donald's view. Not a problem. 12 hours of working time, with a 2-hour meal break in the middle. The job content is to help Sherlock accept commissions, entertain guests and record some necessary information, and then follow him when he travels, helping him along the way. Do simple tasks like take cover while stalking others, buy coffee, etc. To be precise, it was a job as a porter and a valet, with a weekly salary of £1 and a monthly salary of nearly £4 and 2 shillings. Even Donald, who is still not clear about the price, knows how outrageous this salary is, and the exorbitant amount makes people doubt the nature of this work. With all due respect, this remuneration is not in line with the job content you are mentioning now. If you need me to do something special, you can tell me in advance. It's not that I haven't seen a recruiter in my previous life. The notices posted say that it is 9 to 5, and the monthly salary is 8,000. When people are fooled into it, it is layer upon layer of exploitation. So Donald decided to ask things out before then. Special things? Of course there are. I need you to help me translate some documents, which is this kind of ancient script. This is one of your daily jobs. Others, you also see my other jobs on the business card, paranormal consultant, which means that I often have special guests who need my help with special things, such as wraith haunts. When he said this, Sherlock's body moved forward deliberately, his eyes flickered from side to side as if he was afraid of something, and his low tone seemed to be expressing some unknown fear. Amazing. Would I say that I summoned demons in the sewers last night? People are still in my body now, resentful spirits and so on. Compared with demons, they can't be on the stage. In addition, why can I smell a light fragrance from this person in front of me? Is it a men's perfume? Do detectives also like this kind of thing? As for this Charlotte Swift, although he looks very reliable, Donald has noticed a hint of escape from his behavior, but it doesn't matter. Even if the employer is a fool, he can endure such a high salary. You do not believe. Sherlock rightly regarded Donald's bland attitude as contempt and disbelief, so he decided to bring this newly recruited assistant to see the world, so as not to yell at anything in the future. In the name of signing a contract and getting acquainted with the working environment, Donald follows Sherlock to his detective agency. According to Sherlock, there is only about a 5-minute tutorial, and the location is not far, otherwise, he would not come to the Oak Tavern to post a job advertisement. This world is not as peaceful as you have come into contact with. Evil beings live around us, perhaps in the sewers under this road, or in a dark alley somewhere, watching humans and ready to take advantage of the emptiness. Enter. On the way, Sherlock spared no effort in instilling horror in Donald with horrors of creatures and the supernatural. Have you seen it? Donald saw what he was saying, thinking of clichés, maybe he really knew some secrets. Of course I've seen it. Not only monsters, I've also seen people who are as strong as monsters. Don't tell people everywhere, I promise others to keep it a secret. Okay, I'm your assistant now. The employer's words are instructions. Everything I hear will be forgotten after I get off work, and I will remember it again when I go to work tomorrow. Monsters and people who are as strong as monsters, such information is really general. His eyes wandered around the streets at will. Today should be regarded as Donald's real contact with the world. This feeling is like a trip abroad in a previous life, and he went to a place where the historical buildings are extremely well preserved. The various cultures and environmental conditions in foreign countries impacted Donald's original impression of the world. Everything was fresh, from the clothes on the pedestrians, the carriages that occasionally passed by, the extremely prominent clock tower in the distance, and subconsciously glanced at the pocket watch, 10 hours 59 minutes and 50 seconds. Countdown time in mind, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The bell rings. Clang clang clang, the bell rang 3 times, the summer sun was a little dazzling, and Sherlock in front was talking about the weather. Cloudless sunny days like today are rare in Preston. On the one hand, the factories in the industrial area emit smoke around the clock, and on the other hand, it is always rainy in North Hark, just like most of the Lane Empire. A sunny day is a luxury. Casually echoing 2 sentences, Donald felt a trance for no reason, and occasionally glanced at the corner of the street, where there was a man in a black dome hat, facing this side, his figure stagnant. The strange vision reappeared. Donald clearly saw the grey fog above the man's head, not just watching, he was watching himself. Who is this guy? Donald took 2 steps to catch up, but the man immediately disappeared around the corner. Donald, what's wrong with you? Sherlock's voice woke Donald up. Now is not the time to go after people, but there is a detective by his side. Some things cannot be shared with others. It's nothing. It seemed that an acquaintance of mine passed by there just now. I wanted to go up and say hello. He looked back and turned to Sherlock. Unlike the black mist on the man just now, the white mist above his head. What does this actually mean? He deliberately put his eyes on the pedestrians on the street and wanted to try this ability, but he just glanced at it, and before he could take a closer look, his eyes felt sour, forcing him to close his eyes and open them again. Everything went back to normal. Only eyes that were sore to tears were left. In addition to the mental power that can move objects in a small amount, this is the second ability that has been discovered so far, and its function is unknown. It's just that the grey fog over the man's head on the corner is very similar to the 2 murderers in the alley. For the time being, he can be regarded as a hostile person, so be careful. My office is here, number 17 Xiangsha Street. You have to write down the name of this place. Tomorrow is the official day to go to work. You can't be late. Stopping in front of a house, it is no different from ordinary houses, except that there is a wooden sign of Swift Detective Agency outside, and the symbol is a wooden pipe. The office is still on the 1st floor. The work area is on the 1st floor, which is the living room of my house. The second floor is where my brother and I live. He often goes on business trips, and the same is true these days. I forgot to tell you that the second floor is a private area and I don't have access to. You cannot go up at will. There is no room for negotiation. As long as you find out once, you will be dismissed. There is no room for negotiation. I will write this into the contract. Can I accept it? Donald has no hobby of peeping into other people's bedrooms, let alone the bedrooms of two men, and immediately nodded to show his understanding. The structure of the house is not much different from that of Donald's house. The entrances are all corridors, but Sherlock's house occupies a larger area, and the corresponding living room area is also much larger. Reading www.yuyugonshu.com. The drafted signing documents and some important things are upstairs. I have to go upstairs to pick them up. You are waiting for me in the living room. You can take a look at it. That table is where you will work in the future. You can clean it up first. After Sherlock finished speaking, he left Donald alone and went upstairs. Turning to the living room, the core of the living room is the fireplace. The winter temperature in Preston is not low. Taking the fireplace as the starting point, Donald looked at the surrounding environment. In front of the fireplace were two opposite brown sofas, with a mahogany dwarf in the middle, and against the wall against the fireplace was a large table with 3 chairs on the left and right, with file bags stacked on them. Scattered papers, bags of some snacks. The left side of the table is against the wall, and a brown wooden board similar to the notice board in the Oak Tavern is behind the chair. Some small silver thumbtacks are used to fix some broken papers and photos. The right side is facing the first floor window. Go out and see the street outside. Choose the left side as the position where you want to sit in the future, facing the window. The lighting is good and you can see the outside scene, so that you will not be exposed to the sun all the time. Next to it is the door of the living room. If someone knocks on the door, you can get up and open it immediately, and you can walk a few steps less. You can sit and never stand. Arranging the information on the table, since Sherlock said that you can read it casually, Donald also looked at the information in the process of arranging. Among them, there is a considerable part of the homicide case information. The file bag contains newspapers, victim information, murderer information, a summary of the modus operandi, and a summary of the process of solving the case. First, he picked out the complete document bag and sorted it out separately. However, when Donald picked up a document bag marked with the case of floating corpses in the river, the exposed half of the photo caught his attention. The shooting angle of the black and white photo is a little oblique. The photographer seems to be squatting behind the wall to take the shot. Donald rotates the photo to adjust to a normal angle of view. Under a new moon, a monster with a height of 2 meters or more was standing on the stepped platform next to the river, with both hands. It should be said that it was a strange pair of claws pinching someone in the air, shooting when the time is right to capture the state of the liquid flowing from the person's feet. Donald carefully observed every detail in the photo. In his previous life, he had seen too many specious rumors, a water monster in a certain pond, a savage in a certain frame, and those who discovered that they were all serious and hard to distinguish. So is there any technology for photo falsification in this era? Under the premise that demons do exist, are the existence of these monsters for granted? In 1808 of the imperial calendar, several floating corpses appeared in the urban river of Preston, North Berkshire. The cause of death of the deceased was excessive blood loss caused by broken bodies. It was rumored that monsters wounded people, and the case caused extremely bad social impact. The Preston Police Department was ordered to solve the case within 5 days. Sherlock appeared behind him, and the sudden sound shocked Donald, who was attentive. After showing his existence, Sherlock continued, 3 days later, the case was solved. The murderer was a group of thugs. They were looking for a target beside the city's river. They beat the target to death with weapons such as iron rods and hammers, and then threw them into the river, disguising the phenomenon of monsters killing people, in an attempt to blur public view. What about this photo? This is a photo I got from a special channel. I heard that the clearest photo was bought and collected by a rich man. There is no doubt about its authenticity. The monster in the photo does exist. As for the external remarks, it is only the government. I just don't want people to be exposed to this kind of stuff. He took the photo from Donald's hand and put it back into the file bag. He picked up a file bag next to him and pointed to the text on it. In the case of shredded corpses on the roof, the deceased was found in the attic of an abandoned house. All the doors and windows of the house were tightly locked, only one skylight on the top floor was open, and the 5-meter-high mud wall had no tools to climb on. Traces: how did the murderer drag the 3 deceased to the roof skylight and then shred the corpse on the roof? From beginning to end, Donald stood by the table and watched Sherlock pick up and put down documents one by one. There were nearly 10 cases in total. The scattered information on this table turned out to be all special cases, and there was not one in his description. The case is not surprising, either because the modus operandi is beyond human ability, or because some special traces found in the detection of the case are fascinating. Are these cases repeated? Hey? Isn't it time for you to ask why I have to be fed up to collect information on these cases? These are all finalized cases, and the earliest ones were more than 10 years ago. Looking at Donald with great interest, this assistant seemed to have a different focus from ordinary people, which aroused Sherlock's curiosity. You should collect information on these special cases to prove the existence of monsters like the one in this photo. If the police department just excuses the case with excuses, and these monsters do exist, there is no reason for them not to continue committing crimes. Donald thought that Sherlock was dissatisfied with the perfunctory attitude of the police department to collect data, and continued on the principle that the boss is God. You underestimate the police station in Preston City and the special forces that guard the city. They are far more powerful than ordinary people imagine. These cases are covered up by the truth after they are solved. Then you still. What else are you collecting these case materials for? It's a secret, and I won't answer you. Smacking his lips, what else can Donald say, as long as the boss is happy? Holding the desk with one hand, Sherlock handed over the contract between the two parties, and Donald had no idea of asking. He was not interested in these so-called supernatural special cases. After all, what was happening to him was more serious than these long-term events. 1.5 star. It's hard to protect yourself, so how can you have the time to take care of others? The contract simply lists the job content and salary issues. What is more important are the 3 precautions at the end of the contract. 1. Do not enter the second floor area without the permission of the employer. 2. Without the permission of the employer, do not disclose any information in the firm to others, including the employer's family. 3. During the period of working abroad, take the employer's instruction as the first action criterion, and prohibit any private action. If you have no opinion, then sign below, and work will officially start tomorrow, and declare in advance that this contract is entirely of your own accord. I will give you a weekly salary of £1, so that the work you do is in line with this price. Then what if there is a job content that exceeds this £1? He pointed to the file bag on the table next to him. Sherlock, a private detective, was somewhat unprofessional in Donald's eyes. He always felt that Sherlock would be involved in some strange incidents in the future because of Sherlock's hobby for this type of special case. Add money. Raising his eyebrows and answering in a simple and effective way, Donald signed his name on the contract without hesitation. It's nice to be rich. I'll go first, see you tomorrow morning. After signing the contract, Donald couldn't wait to leave. He still had a lot of things to do. Please, it's your break time, remember to close the door when you go out. Sherlock sat cross-legged on the sofa beside the road, raised his chin slightly, put his hands on his knees, closed his eyes, and stopped communicating with Donald. Leaving the Swift Detective Agency, it was only 12 o'clock. Donald found a restaurant on Gazong Street, ordered a noodle, and reached out to take the book wrapped in parchment in the cloth bag. Going back, I turned to a newspaper for June 13th. The things that were valued by the predecessors who had joined the cult at that time were even rewarded with a summoning circle. No matter how you thought about it, it would not be a normal thing, so the standard Donald looked for in the newspapers was very simple: robbery, theft, kidnapping. Looking for something bad is always right. However, what Donald didn't expect was that he underestimated the crime rate of this era. On June 13 alone, there were 3 thefts recorded in the newspapers, one of which was injured, and one more in the east of the city. In the case of robbery and murder, it was only after a closer look that the deceased died 2 days ago, so it should have nothing to do with Donald. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack. There are so many reports in the newspapers. What if the actions at the time were sufficiently secretive, or the incident was not reported due to other reasons? When he really started to do it, Donald realized that things were not as simple as he thought. It's too difficult to figure out what happened at that time just based on an important thing in the diary and a vague date. Lunch was placed on the table, a simple plate of noodles, just sprinkled with some powder and sauce. The next second he entered, Donald began to miss the white rice and the shredded pork noodle soup he had left over. He didn't know if there was such a thing in this era. The light in front of the table dimmed, and someone took the seat in front of him. Donald remembered that the dining table around him was empty when he came in. He looked up and saw an acquaintance. "Donald, did your ceremony succeed?" The visitor couldn't wait to inquire about the situation of the demon-subduing ceremony. He knew that Donald had prepared this magic circle some time ago. "Ronan, what about you? Have you succeeded?" "That's right, the person in front of me is the one who introduced Donald into the cult, Ronan. He had appeared in a dream before, but now he looks extremely haggard, with heavy eye bags and pus-filled pimples on his face, proving that he may have not had a real rest for a while." Simple observation. Donald didn't answer his words immediately. This was to buy time to think. I haven't tried it yet, you know. Roy's accident some time ago was very sad. He couldn't bear the gift of God, it's a pity." According to the content of the dream, Ronan mentioned the reward at that time. Reading www.yuyuganshu.com, and the predecessor obtained the magic circle. Not surprisingly, Ronan also obtained this ritual magic circle. "I want to wait for someone else to try it out first. I'm afraid this Roy is one of the losers. Write down this name. I succeeded. You can try it out with confidence. After all, you have been preparing for so long, haven't you?" Donald put down the iron fork in his hand and moved the noodles with sauce away from his nose. He wanted to confirm one thing. The bad smell he smelled came from Ronan. Like the previous self, this person in front of him is also preparing to perform the demon-subduing ceremony. "Did you really succeed?" The sewer ritual doesn't look like receiving some kind of gift, but Donald can't say he failed because he's still alive with nothing. There are only 2 possibilities: or he hasn't done it yet. Demon-subduing ceremony, or he has succeeded. And only by telling Ronan that he has succeeded will he reveal some key information. Just like we like to ask some experienced people some professional questions, it is not that we do not know, but we just want to gain confidence from other people's experiences. Ronan even more hoped that someone could give him advice on such matters concerning his life and wealth. "Have you succeeded? What ability have you acquired? Please, tell me, I've been driven crazy these days." The 4 of us, Roy and Joss, were unable to withstand God's gift. "It stands to reason that I shouldn't try this again, but I can't help it, the reward we spent so long and hard to get. In fact, if I hadn't passed this restaurant today and saw you, in a few days I would have going to fight." Hearing Donald's success, Ronan's eyes could not hide the envy and yearning. God's gift. Donald's finger pointed to the noodles on the edge of a fork, and his mental power immediately wrapped the noodles under the control of his mind and slowly pulled up. "It's amazing. Is there anything else?" For people like Ronan who yearn for mysterious power, this is enough to make him moan with excitement. Ronan, this is my ability, not magic, do you understand? Deliberately created the appearance that he didn't want to attract attention and kept a low profile and mysterious. In fact, Donald can't do anything other than this one right now, but he has to scare Ronan, even the exhaustion after using mental power. Completely suppress it, and must not reveal any clues. Sorry, I'm a little emotional, can I know how you succeeded? After all, Roy and Joss failed. Witnessing Donald's success, Ronan's trust in him has reached a certain level, and he hopes to learn some useful information from his mouth in the ritual of conquest. This is right in Donald's arms, I'm afraid you won't beg me. You've been asking me, it's not fair. In exchange, you have to tell me how Roy and Joss failed. How did you know? Now Donald has more hidden problems than Ronan, but he tried his best to restrain his thirst for knowledge, and remained indifferent and casual from beginning to end. Some questions could not be opened directly. A straightforward question like what was going on, that would reveal the status quo that he knew nothing about. When one's own capital is extremely scarce, if you want to obtain something of value at a very low price, you must pretend that you have everything, and then let others take the initiative to exchange. As long as the other party asks for something, the initiative is in his own hands. This kind of behavior is called white wolf with empty gloves, and it is called stealing chicken at the poker table. Donald, you must not tell Bishop Rostely about this, I violated his teachings, I know it is disrespectful to God, but I am afraid that I will be abandoned by God if I fail. Ronan's expression seemed to be frightened, followed by a humble attitude, which made Donald quickly realize that his unintentional question might have caught Ronan's handle. Here comes the opportunity. It depends on your performance, tell me what happened. With a serious and indifferent face, it was the first time that Ronan felt the pressure from this young man who used to be weak. Sure enough, strength can make people confident. After the first few meetings, I followed them privately and found their place. I didn't want to do anything to them, it was just an insurance. Ronan was still trying to explain his behavior. Donald just nodded to signal him to continue. In order not to attract attention, he swallowed some noodles that were difficult to eat. Isn't the reward we got 2 weeks ago? I know they will be ready as soon as they get the reward, so I want to see how they are first, and every 2 days, I will visit their residence, about June. At 9 p.m. on the 25th, this was the time when I arrived outside Roy's house. In the past, he would be at home at this time, but there was no light in the whole house that day. I knew that he went to receive God's gift, just like on the evening of the 27th. I went outside Joss's house and found that his house was empty. Then my observation interval changed from 2 days to 1 day. Until today, I passed by Joss's house half an hour ago. The letterbox on the doorstep is filling up, they're both gone. Donald, if yours didn't show up in time and succeed, I might have driven myself crazy. The blue veins on his forehead bulge out. Ronan's face is very thin. It's really thin and not a reference to emotion, so when he makes some excited expressions, the effect will be enlarged, which makes it easy for others to see his emotions. Donald didn't look at his expression, which would have wiped out the little appetite left, but he still felt the chill rising behind him. The cold prevented members or a few of them from contacting each other, and issued a magic dropping array that they called rewards. So far, 3 people have tried, Roy, Jose lost contact, and the rest of Donald's soul devoured and facilitated his own transmigration. Is this really a reward? Suddenly he looked at Ronan, his lips twitched. Do you want to tell him? The ritual is likely to mean death. What's wrong? Nothing. When and where do you plan to perform the ceremony? It's very particular, and I can give you some advice. When the words reached his lips, his meaning changed, and he continued to listen for news. I couldn't tell him that Ronan seemed to have fallen into the brainwashing thoughts of the cult, and speaking out his thoughts would not only save him, but he would also get involved. Sorry, I want to live. In the evening 3 days later, my family has a log cabin outside the city of Preston, and I'm going to perform the ceremony there. Is it all right? The location is far away from the crowd. The time is in the evening. There is nothing wrong. In that case, I wish you success. I will still be waiting for you at this location of the store. If you succeed, remember to tell me. Ronan is guarding against Donald. The time and place are all said, but it is very vague. The jungle cabin outside the city of Preston? The knows where? Since there is no way to observe the whole process of the demon subduing ceremony up close, Donald has second-hand preparations. He doesn't want me to know the process, and there is no problem in telling me the result. Whether you come or don't come that day will explain some problems. Okay, I'm leaving. Wrapping his clothes tightly to prevent the smell inside from escaping too much, Ronan left quickly and disappeared into the crowd outside the restaurant. Waiter, bring me 2 breads. He raised his hand, and bent his index and middle fingers together. The habitual movement of his body caught the attention of the waiter. He couldn't eat the noodles anymore, so he bought 2 bread pads to put his stomach down. Carrying 2 breads, a small glass of lemonade and a cloth bag, he returned home full of thoughts. Pong! As soon as he entered the door, the abnormal noise from the kitchen in the house made Donald a little nervous. He remembered that he locked the door when he went out, and Infinita did get into the car. The location of the kitchen does have a window facing out. Is there a burglar in the house? He looked left and right, holding the umbrella at the entrance in his hand. There was a blunt iron thorn at the tip, and it should have caused a lot of pain when stabbed. He approached the kitchen lightly, and halfway through, a new voice appeared in the kitchen. Squeak mouse? Donald breathed a sigh of relief. Although rats are not very popular, they are at least a good solution. Next time, go to the street to buy a rat trap, keep your head high, and stride into the kitchen. As the footsteps approached, there was another noise in the kitchen, and then everything calmed down. Donald just glanced at it and confirmed that the window latch was closed. The mouse jumped into the living room or upstairs, and he didn't want to sleep with the sound of the mouse at night. He doesn't want to read in the living room. Donald has no sense of security in this room, both before and now. Like the living room, a public area for daily activities, he doesn't have much interest in staying, even if Infinita is not there. Originally, he planned to go back to his room, but when he was walking through the corridor, he accidentally saw the sunlight shining in from outside, which made him want to bask in the sun inexplicably. Demons always hate the sun. There is a platform on the roof, go there and bask in the devil. Driven by childish thoughts, Donald quickly went upstairs to remove the reclining chair from his room, and walked up the stairs to the second floor. The small door leading to the top floor was not locked, but a rusted iron chain was randomly wrapped around it a few times from the inside. It should be seen that it has not been opened for a long time. Pulling off the chain, he threw it aside at will, and the sight in front of him instantly made Donald's mood much better. Maybe it was left by the previous owner, or it was a potted plant that was put down a long time ago. Except for the empty space in the front row of the roof, unattended plants were growing wildly on the stone shelves on both sides, and some of the pots were blooming. Jasmine, Chinese rose, embellished among the dark green branches and leaves. Reading www.youcanshu.com is really nice. I thought that the roof that was not cleaned for a long time would be very dirty, but the actual situation is not bad. There are plants absorbing dust, and there are more fallen leaves on the ground. There is still about a few square meters of space in the center, which is just used to place rattan chairs. The whole person went to the chair, and put the bread and lemonade on the small stool beside it. This is also what is in the bedroom, and now it is regarded as a table. The high-rise buildings in the distance can be seen in full view. Except for some unsightly chimneys, even the shouting from the street seems harmonious at this time. When the mood was relaxed, he had to do the next thing. He took out "Expel the Evil." Instead of flipping the book, he took off the parchment from the packaging. This was the highlight. When Ken Antoine of the bookstore held this book, he probably didn't notice that it wasn't just parchment, it actually had content on it, and someone wrote some content on it with special characters. Donald discovered this in the bookstore cellar, but didn't say much or show it, and didn't start researching it until he was alone. When you are abandoned by the gods, don't lose heart, step into the deep darkness and find your own light. Self-righteous emotions need to be avoided, the dark power will corrode your heart. When you find that you can no longer take control of yourself, give everything, burn your soul, and gain peace. 2 paragraphs, one up and one down. Donald, who read out the contents softly, fell silent for a while, and turned his eyes to Expel the Evil beside him. How on earth did this parchment come together with this religious book? The function of books is to help people escape from evil and darkness, but the content on the parchment is to ask people to walk into the darkness and draw strength from the darkness. Is this a coincidence?